You don't live to work. You work to live. So why do we demand that everyone has to have a job if that job has no purpose? Welcome to the Mad Ramble, the podcast where we challenge the gods themselves to come down here and eat their damn dinner before it gets cold. And on the side, build a better world than the one we've got. Because it could easily be 100 times better with just a little bit of effort. Effort that starts with you. Now I know the world seems crazy right now, even though it's been a lot worse than this, but that doesn't matter. Because you don't live in the past, you live now. You don't care, and you don't have to care how bad someone had it 50 years ago or halfway around the world, because it has no relation to your suffering of the moment. Which in the US could be being laid off, or furloughed, locked down and quarantined, told to close your business and to isolate yourself from others, and to stare on while our supposed leaders argue about petty bullshit just to see who gets to be king of the dung heap. That's a parallel for DC, but it doesn't have to be like that. There's a far better way beyond all this fear-mongering and political division and a new Great Depression. And that's choosing to be human again. To rebuild that community we gave up so long ago. And through that, to get not just purpose in our lives, but security again. Peace of mind from evictions, from depression, from worrying about a paycheck at the end of the month, or who the next president might be. You can have freedom from all of that fear and worry and anxiety. Even if that sounds too good to be true, it's not. Because my name is Astiago de Tropica, the laid-back builder of a better world from Los Estados Unidos. And I'll be y'all's guide through the madness of modern society to become human again on the other side. And today I'd like to tackle that huge fallout from the coronavirus, the economic side of it, that's revealing one of the greatest lies of modern times. It's not the most tearful topic for sure, but its mask needs to be removed, no pun intended, so that everyone can see it clearly. Because right now, it's just hanging with the nose exposed, and there ain't much point in half-truths, pun intended there. But that problem is that more than half of our current economy, however you choose to measure it, whether in GDP or employment or in cualquier manera, is meaningless. It's without purpose. The plague has revealed just how non-essential so many jobs in modern society are, just how few of them are necessary for humanity to survive. So what are all these other glorified jobs for? What do they actually contribute if they're not about the survival of the people or the country or our species as a whole? I'm not the first one to recognize this issue of meaningless jobs. It's been known since the 1800s. There's a lot of books about it in academic and political and economic movements. It's something that Marx himself saw, almost seeing it as a side note, that technology has exceeded our humanity. To paraphrase Einstein. That we can easily work for far less hours for the exact same outcome because of technology, whether in food or in industry or in services these days, because we keep improving our efficiency through that technology and education or information sharing, including through infotainment on platforms like YouTube or a podcast like this one. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've been able to make more and more food with less and less people. Industry used to use those displaced farmers, but now those factory floors are increasingly automated by robots. So we've displaced a huge amount of the population and continue to do so. Because technology keeps evolving, pushing people out of jobs they got now for another one tomorrow. People have been pushed off their land or pulled to the cities by the idea of opportunity. But look how it's all turned out. with less and less landowners, more and more renters, beholden to their employers just to stay alive, getting dangerously close to medieval serfdom. Slavery with extra steps. Nah, in the words of Rick and Morty. Not slavery, exactly, but it's certainly not an equitable situation, and it doesn't have to be designed this way. What do all these people who no longer have to work in the fields or the factories do? It used to be the majority of mankind. If we're constantly told how much we need a job to work under and for someone else in modern society, is that really the best way? What do we do? If there's no longer those agricultural and industrial jobs available, we make it up. We create a lie. We create a scam. We manipulate each other through marketing to sell things no one else needs. And we commodify the things that we do need to create jobs that didn't exist before. Bottled water is a weird fucking thing. Apartment management companies. Developers of whole suburbs and neighborhoods building shitty houses that fall apart in a couple years. Angie's List or Home Advisor, taking a cut out of those who maintain the whole system as plumbers or electricians or landscapers or painters. Look at middle management and their lack of contribution. What about WeWork, a company that rents out office space to people who don't actually need it anymore? How about limited edition tennis shoes? You can make more, easily. But they're creating artificial scarcity because the high price is the whole point of buying them. Like Rolex or Gucci or Rolls-Royce or any other luxury brand. Look at the diamond cartels, hoarding diamonds just to try and make their price seem higher. Look at OPEC, look at oil. You're not buying the actual product when it comes to those luxury things. You're buying exclusivity. The right to show off what you can afford while other people can't. Because they haven't come up with a silly idea of their own yet, and they have to work for someone that already has. We work at jobs we hate to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. I can't remember where that quote comes from, but I'm sure someone will know. It's silly. But more importantly, it's empty. And it doesn't contribute to the survival of anyone, which is the whole point of life. It's inherent in asking the question, what's the point of life? To live, to survive, and hopefully to thrive. But even the 1%, supposedly at the top of this game, are hurting their chances at survival by playing it. But can you even blame the 1%? I said we are the ones who created this, not them. Not the other, the outsider. No. If more than half of our economy is wrapped up in bullshit, we're almost all guilty in keeping it going. Both the ones creating the problem and the victims of it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. We're all guilty in this system. This means you can't single out the manipulators or the scammers. You just have to play by different rules and build a better system that doesn't encourage selling mierda to make a living in the first place. A world that works with our natural human behavior consciously, instead of subconsciously working against it and pretending like it's not there. Now, the essential workers, now so few because of technology, aren't respected in this culture that we've created together. They get thrown under the bus in terms of both status in society and in the rewards they don't get for being the ones holding the world on their shoulders. Farmers, truck drivers, logistics operators, those who work in the petroleum industry and oil and gas, which is a lot more than just keeping your car running. It's also creating everything with plastic in it, or in fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and tractors, and keeping those trucks that bring the food from the farms to the processing centers to the grocery store. So it's important. All those people who keep the world running without anyone noticing them. And their bosses and the endless middle management between the head honcho and the worker, they reap the fruit of the labor. Now, when I start speaking like that, you can guess who else has seen the problem, especially when you're talking about the means of production or class conflict. The alternative answer to the status quo. Almost the only one that we have besides a return to religious fundamentalism. Leftist ideology. Which is what? Some form of socialism, maybe state intervention on behalf of the common people, of the worker, maybe in modern times, universal basic income or a social welfare state. These are the ideas that get tried and have been for the past century in a constant conflict with the status quo, and sometimes they even work for a little while. I might be a former libertarian, but I can admit when government action does something good. But government solutions never last. Not within the illusion of a democracy and not within an open authoritarian dictatorship. If a safety net for the most vulnerable gets created now, it could easily be dismantled by the people who win the next election. Or another economic recession or depression forces the government to cut services they can no longer afford, even though they had noble intentions to begin with. Socialism, even democratic socialism, can't and won't last forever if it's tied to the government. Look what happened in Greece, running social welfare on borrowed time and borrowed money. It can never sustain that level of spending without being in the EU. Or if you want to look at a much worse case, the Soviet Union, especially in the end. There, people were forced to be on the social programs by the threat of violence, and those programs might have worked somewhat, extremely inefficiently and after a lot of bloodshed. But in 1991, the rug was just swept out from under the people completely as all those services that they were forced to depend on went away, were dismantled and sold off to the buddies of the new neoliberal government. And now look at Russia. Today is a tragedy. Alcoholism, disease, poverty, and probably the complete demographic collapse of Russians as a people. They just might disappear from the face of the earth entirely because of the actions of the Soviet government. Socialism doesn't work by force. Neoliberal capitalism doesn't work by freedom. Not in its cutthroat insistence on individual pursuit of profit with an artificial rat race to the top. But there's another option. A far better one than any presidential candidate or political pundit or crazed religious zealot has suggested so far. Revolution. To reclaim not the means of production, but our humanity. Not to use force, but to choose individual by individual, to use cooperation instead of competition or conflict. To accept our nature as humans, as animals that can think, and all the instincts that come with that. In wanting a community that you can trust, in working with other people instead of above or below them, regardless of your role or specialization. Because we're not superior to one another, we're just different. And if technology has progressed so far, why should we have to work so hard in 9-to-5 jobs for someone else when we could easily produce what we need, even by modern lifestyle standards, with a lot less work, and without having to take by force from the wealthy? A revolution to become human again, peacefully, by choice, simply by accepting our natural behavior instead of being arrogant and insisting on artificial ideas to run our lives, like neoliberalism or hyper-competitive capitalism, or fascism, or authoritarian socialism, the idea of obedience to authority, whether that's corporate authority or political. Y'all have a choice to make. On one hand, you have the status quo and continuous decline and disparity. On the other, short-term state socialism, which will always fail at some point. And on the third hand, which would be awesome to have, by the way, maybe like on the end of a tail. On that hand, you have the choice of being human instead of a machine in someone else's system that thinks they know better than you. What'll you choose? My name has been Astiago de Tropica. I hope y'all enjoyed this edition of the Mad Ramble and maybe got something to think about out of it. I publish an episode every Friday. If you want to join a conversation on changing the world, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe on whatever platform you happen to be listening on, or you can check out our Facebook page to get involved in La Revolución. Speaking of which, lo viva. Next time we'll be getting into what you can do to grow beyond our sillily designed economy. But until that time, thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all around. Paz y prosperidad.